Fantastic. Okay. As people are filing into the room, I am going to start with a bit of housekeeping, and we will set these things up for so we can actually kick off the discussion because up until about 60 minutes before we had this meeting, there was more news coming down the pipeline about what's going on in comic book distribution, which is what we are here to talk about tonight. Hello, my name is Gamal Hennessy. I am the co-founder, or I guess co-director of Comics Experience, which is an organization that teaches comic book creators the business and creative aspects of working in the business so that they can have more enjoyable and profitable careers. What we are going to be talking about today is the future of comic book distribution in light of the fact that Diamond went bankrupt in January, and the fact that there may or may not be various types of tariffs on various elements of things that go into the at least the print side of the comic book business, it is more challenging than ever for a comic book creator, especially an independent or emerging comic book creator, to try to figure out the best distribution channel mix to get their books into the hands of the people who are most likely to read them. What we have attempted to do is we have attempted to bring together experts in various aspects of comic book distribution so we can talk about not just diamond and tariffs, but all of the different options available to comic creators for their distribution. And as I'm asking all of these questions, I'm going to be focusing on specifically on emerging and independent comic book creators because what Image and what Marvel and DC and Viz and Penguin Random House, how they deal with these issues is not how you're going to deal with these issues because you can't. Um, so we're going to focus on what you can do, and we're going to kick things off with Adam. Um, I guess Adam, you should actually explain who you are, and then I will ask you the question. 'Cause that way, people don't just think I'm asking some random NPC. What the about comic book distribution. So, Adam, please.
Hi, my name is Adam Freeman, and I am a random NPC. No, I have. Thank you, Robert. I have worked in comics now my entire adult life. Started off as a comic book retailer. We eventually bought the store, and then we became an Eisner Award-winning comic shop. In 2008, the last time we had what looks like this kind of recession, I packed it up and went over to publishing. I've since worked now between my day jobs and my clients. I've now worked with over 24 different publishers, including, I don't know, half of the current top 10 publishers. I run a company called Prana Direct Market Solutions. We are a consulting and publishing services company, meaning that we work with a lot of different publishers, doing every aspect of publishing and including negotiating with distributors and handling distributor POs and working with printers and all of the things that a publisher has to do on a day-to-day basis. I will say that as somebody who has spent nearly his entire life working in and around the direct market, it has been a exciting time to be doing this. I will say we do a live show of our own. I was just saying right before we got started that we do a live show of our own, and we realized that doing an industry focused live show every week there's something new to talk about because we're all dealing with this crazy roller coaster in real time. But it's strangely also we're also in a better place as far as stability is concerned for most publishers and for most retailers than we have been in a very long time because there are now more options and everything is decentralized. So
Yes, and I think that is the first, I think that's where we want to start the discussion. What I want to ask you, and I'm going to link a article that Rob Salkowitz, who was going to join us but could not, he still contributed an article to the discussion, talked about the The ironic fact that we are going through this diamonds tariff situation, but at the same time, a lot of indicators for comic book distribution in terms of sales, in terms of potential crossovers, in terms of actual numbers ordered is looking up. But for but what I want to start with you, because you are focusing primarily on the direct market, is what is the state of direct market distribution for emerging and small publishers in the wake of the situation that we are in, which is currently in a lot of flux?
I would say the state for small publishers is uh really the same as it is for larger companies, including we now have on our panel the EIC of Boom Studios. It's the same really for all of these guys. We are in a place now where you must be decentralized. You must have multiple revenue streams. You must be responsible for building your own audience. You must be responsible for getting to know who your audience is and where you're going to find new members of that audience. You must do all of those things in order to be a publisher. The days of being able to hand off, just sitting and creating a book and handling solicitation to one, brand manager, and maybe doing a little bit of press, and then going and doing the book itself, and then sending that to a printer and never really having to do much more. Those days are over. Now you really do have to be everywhere. You have to do everything everywhere all at once. It's impossible to really focus in on one distribution channel.
Well, I don't want to go outside the discussion of distribution, but while what you're saying is absolutely true, a lot of the things that we talk about in comics experience in terms of like time management and making sure that the
Sure.
book gets produced, the marketing gets done, the distribution gets done, and I don't know, you actually go to your day job because your comics are probably not paying all of your bills, except for like Charlie. Um, how do you, if you know you have to research more distribution channels and you have to be in more places and you have to build your audience, and by the way, you have to make a decent book while living the rest of your life, how is that supposed to happen?
Well, you figure that out. You let me know. But I can say, I own a small business, and the pressure to be working every moment of the day is real. But I also do focus quite a bit on, what is a healthy work life balance? What is a healthy work family balance? Those things are absolutely real as well. I would say that there's a number of ways that you can leverage where we are now into being able to do that. Uh, Number one, I will say that we're talking about direct market distribution, and you mentioned earlier in the introduction that we are going through a period of growth, and that is the incredible piece about this. We'll know better when we break down what April looks like, but one of the things our company does is take a look at POS system sales data. We have access to the sales data of over 200 stores, and all of those stores are telling us that we're seeing more and more people come in and subscribe to single issue comics. We're seeing more and more people pre-order. We're seeing larger orders from retailers themselves. All of this is saying to us growth. Over the last 2 years, we have a chart that shows that what we call our fan confidence rating has done nothing but go up month to month to month. There's some spikiness to that, but it's all the way up and to the right for the last 2+ years. So what I'm saying is that the direct market is very strong right this second if you're making comics, especially if you're making independent comics. Yes, it's harder than it's ever been. Yes, you do need some sort of direct consumer aspect of your company. Yes, you do need to go into the direct market comic shops, because even if you are right before I came on here, I was listening to an interview with Brandon Sanderson, right? Arguably the best-selling author of any kind right now. And what he said was their Kickstarters they set the record for sales on a single Kickstarter. And that's over all tech companies and everything else. And the record still stands. 10% of his sales come from Kickstarter. right? So what does that say? That says that if you are out there and if you are finding multiple channels, those rewards are there. Now, to get to the question that actually spawned those two things, uh, I would say now, on your Discord in, I think it was October, I posted that now is the time for building alliances. Right now is the time for gathering strength together. Now is the time for building your own building, having bringing several creators together for one publisher and working under one umbrella, because one of them is going to be better at marketing, one of them is going to be better at dealing with post-production design, right?
Mhm.
All of those things. Now is the time for consolidating that kind of power, because we live, as you posted, that we live in exciting times, as Rob said, and we need teams. We need teams to get through this. Going at this alone means you're going to focus on one thing, and that one thing should be the quality of the book. The book needs to be quality first, but once you have that quality, you need help and you need to be out there.
Before I segue to Charlie, because it's going to be a good segue,
Yeah.
I will say two things. One, as the director of comics experiences, we actually have quite a few of our members who are, whether they're crowdfunding, whether they're doing direct market distribution, they are starting to work together. They are trying to, I mean, it's not, they're not building necessarily an image comics model. It's at this point, it's on a comic by comic, project by project basis, but that kind of collaboration on a wider multi-book level is actually increasing. So we have that. On the other side of it, I will say, as an attorney, if you're going to have a publishing company and your publishing company is working with other publishing companies, please have a contract in place that stipulates the rights, revenue, responsibility, and recovery of everything that you're talking about. Otherwise, a good thing can turn into a bad thing, but you didn't come to hear me talk about legal nonsense. So I'll talk to Charlie instead. Charlie, crowdfunding, unlike the direct market, if you're on the side of the actual comic book creator, crowdfunding seems to be one of those areas of distribution that only is seems to be only growing over the past 10 years. And you have been had remarkable success as part of that growth. So from your perspective, do you feel like emerging and independent publishers should focus more of their efforts, because they have limited time and because crowdfunding requires a considerable amount of effort for every campaign, pre, during, and post? Do you think independent and emerging creators should focus more on crowdfunding and less on the direct market, given the instability of the direct market right now?
Well, I'm going to start off with a big heaping of it depends. I think it depends on who you are as an emerging publisher or an independent publisher. Obviously there's a huge difference. If you're going to call Boom an independent publisher and say me, and while I've had a lot of success, there's also a lot of people who are probably 4 to 5 years behind where I am, right?
Mhm.
And so I think like if you're a creator and you're trying to figure out what your path is forward, I think you want to have a business plan. I think that's really important. I think you want to know what your goals are. Are you trying to put out 1 or 2 books to eventually kind of build your brand enough so you can then get licensed work at another publisher and eventually be in the direct market? Because if that's the path that you're looking to do, it's a slightly different path, because working with other publishers, being in the direct market is much more important for what you do. If you're trying to build your own publishing company, then you might want to look at crowdfunding first, depending on how much money you have. And this is what it comes down to. I mean, and some of the other panelists can add to this or correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, as someone who, like, just to give a little bit of background, I started out as an independent creator. I ended up as a direct market publisher for a couple of years, and then went back to, crowdfunding first as what I do, where I have raised a lot of money for my titles and built my own publishing company there. Um, but to succeed in the direct market, you need at least a few of these keys, because you need the stores to order your books. And to do that, you need to have an established IP. If you're Power Rangers, you need to have big name creators on your books that shops know and can bank on. You need to come out consistently on a monthly or a bi-monthly basis. So Wednesday Warriors know you're going to be on the shelves, and you need to come out at a price point that the stores are comfortable in. And lastly, you need a killer hook for your story, but ultimately that's more important for your long-term sales versus your initial sales. Uh, Unfortunately, all of these keys for a newer creator are expensive. They're really expensive to have all of those things on your book. So unless you have really deep pockets, where you can go and invest in all of this, and you have a business model and you know where you're going to start making your money back, maybe crowdfunding is a place that you want to start first. And here's why. The crowdfunding marketplace has evolved differently, in a way that kind of minimizes some of these problems. So while if you have like a big IP, if you're doing a Kickstarter for Power Rangers or G.I. Joe, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier if you have Scott Snyder on your book. There's still numerous examples at a much higher hit rate of creators you've never heard in comics before building brands there. IPs becoming an IP on Kickstarter first. But more importantly, Kickstarter as a marketplace isn't reliant on a monthly schedule. Serialized books might only come out 2 to 3 times a year there, and those are the books that are coming out on a regular basis. And that's what the expectations are. So as an emerging creator, you don't need to have as much cash flow. You just need enough cash flow to maybe get that first issue done or half an issue done. You don't need to have 3 issues, already in production before you solicit the first one. And then, unlike the direct market, where you have to have a price point that's going to match Marvel and DC, who are going to make way more profit on the books than you will, Kickstarter kind of has its own price point, and one that's a little bit easier and more manageable for the independent and emerging creator. So, for me, over time, what you can do on Kickstarter is you can basically build all of those things. You can build a big back catalog. You can establish your IP and get yourself to a place where maybe now it's time to start looking at the direct market. Now, I think Adam's completely right that there are independent creators doing well on Kickstarter. I mean, not Kickstarter, in the direct market.
Can I
But
use my
really
document?
comes down to what that level of
So,
independent creator
for
is.
the marketing expert for North America, so currently we are developing the PR box,
Hold
which
on one
is
second. There. Sorry.
I know John Parker. That was not John Parker.
So like again, like I think Kickstarter is a great place to start to build all the elements that you need to do to be successful in the direct market. And so it really comes down again to it depends on who you are, what stage you're at, and what you're looking for. But to go back to the first thing that Adam said is like right now it's such an important time to be in all of these channels, because you never know when Kickstarter is going to do something really weird where you don't want to be in Kickstarter anymore. Or say Diamond is going to do whatever Diamond is doing right now, and that's really hard to deal with if that's where all your eggs are. So I think it's just good business to be in as many different places as once. But if you're looking for a place to start and you don't have a lot of capital, I think crowdfunding is a wonderful place.
Okay. Okay, that actually wraps it up very succinctly. I should have pointed this out in the beginning, but I was a little scattered and confused. If you'd like to actually ask a question to the panelists, please put the question in the chat and we will get to as many questions as we can as we are moving through all of our different presenters. Adam, did you have anything you wanted to kind of chime in on Charlie's thing, or can I talk to someone?
Just quick yes and on two things he said. I agree that the three things he mentioned to make it easier, but I can give you plenty of success stories, many of which I've worked on that have violated all three of those rules, especially not having recognizable IP and price points. Those two, I think, those two are so permeable. But he's absolutely right. It's really difficult. It's really expensive to try and make any money in the direct market. It's a great place to build a brand. It's not a great place to build, revenue.
Very good. Very good.
I'll just
Moni?
like add to that. The caveat is have Adam work on your book. I think that was the important bit to
Ah,
get
I
that
see.
unknown
I
IP
see.
to do well in the direct market.
I see. And now the shameless plugs begin. Here we go. Uh, Um, Moni, while there's a lot of shenanigans going on in the direct market and crowdfunding is still a very competitive space, I'm under the impression in all the clients that I've had and in what we talk when we talk to creators in comics experience, a lot of them are not taking advantage of library distribution. So could you actually start to talk about the untapped potential of library and distribution for emerging and independent publishers?
Sure, happy to. So, kind of piggybacking off of what both Charlie and Adam have been saying too, diversifying, decentralizing libraries. There are just under 3 million libraries around the world. There are about 125,000 in North America. Most of those have thousands of books, as opposed to about 3,700 retail shops that have hundreds of books. And there are a lot of challenges to getting your print book into a library. There's a lot of barriers to overcome, but it is not a market that you should overlook or that you can really afford to, as everything else is so in flux, to not at least kind of look into and question, because the opportunities ranging from the library, obviously purchasing your book the one time for people to borrow, but also the potential for unlimited discovery, because about 4 million people are still using their libraries physically every day, and that doesn't count digital comics platforms, of which there are at least 3 very good options for that. The digital options are really no-brainers in terms of you're not having to pay to have your book printed or any of those kinds of things. It's minimal lift in terms of, once you're got an agreement to distribute through a digital publisher or a digital distributor for libraries, there's very little else besides just kind of a passive income of people checking out your books and generating those royalties. But the same thing in the library. I come from 20 years of library experience, and the number of times that a book needs to be repurchased because it's falling apart, the number of times that patrons are loving the book and want the rest of a series, or the book disappears and so you have to repurchase, or you need multiple copies because of the popularity. You just don't know what you don't know, but it's kind of a no-brainer for continued income and diversification.
That all of that sounds good, but I know that when you talked to Comics Experience and we had the expert interview with you, two of the things that were kind of challenging points was that one, even with direct market distribution being in flux, there are about 3 or 4, depending on how you count them, major distributors for the direct market, but there is no such vehicle for libraries. So there's 125,000 libraries, but it's not like you can send your orders to one place and all the libraries will get it. So, and then there's the question, especially in the climate that we live in, that books are targeted more for censorship in schools and libraries than they are in shops. They are targeted in shops, but there's much more of a targeted censorship kind of situation going on in libraries. So very quickly, how does the emerging and independent creator deal with that diversified kind of herding cats of 125,000 libraries and the que- issue that their book, once it gets in the library, might be censored?
Sure. So, as far as the libraries, as barriers to getting your book into them, we do have approved distributors for libraries, and that will vary depending on whether we're talking about academic libraries, school libraries, public libraries. But there are approved vendors if you are able to get in, or if your publisher is already getting in with one of those. Yeah, see the distributors that deal directly with libraries. So there is that option. There are options to reach out, particularly to larger library systems. You may have to donate a copy or send a PDF, but another thing is the more that you build relationships with comics librarians specifically, the people that are purchasing the comics for the libraries, those folks become your advocates and they don't soon forget because they really are in tune and know their collections. And pretty soon you'll have like the library conferences that we have annually. And those folks, those who are not purchasing comics are looking to those who are to ask them, what should I be buying? What's been doing well for your library? And that's where you're getting that advocacy and influence. You've got those library champions in your corner. In terms of the censorship, I don't want to downplay it because it's a major issue for the profession. But I do want to say that it is not as much of a concern to you sitting here that you're going to get your book in a library and it's going to be the book that is censored. There are a lot of checks in place before that can occur. And so everything from proper age curation, again, the people who are purchasing these comics know where in the library they should be. As just as the easy example, genderqueer has never been available in the children's library. And so that is one safeguard, collection development policies. And also, as sad as it is, that kind of publicity also seems to drive sales. So you may have a challenge in one library, but as soon as that hits the media, you're actually seeing more people who are wanting to check out what it's all about, wanting to read it to kind of fight back against the bans and challenges. And so that doesn't seem to really hurt anything in terms of book sales, knock on wood.
Yes, I'm actually going to share an article just from last week that came across on Popverse, and they talked about that what they call a Streisand effect, where a book is actually banned or it gets in the news as being challenged, and then people like myself who fight book bans then go out and buy the book, and they buy the book for other people, and they tell other people about it, and then that book gets sold. So there is that boomerang effect. So thank you for highlighting that. Kenny, I'm going to talk to you now, and I'm going to ask you the harder question because digital on a certain level actually solves a lot of the problems that are occurring with either Diamond being a company or not being a company anymore, or there being tariffs or not being tariffs, or how much the book is going to cost, because digital distribution makes all of those problems go away. However, there's been a problem with generating revenue on the digital side of digital comics, even though, the Webtoon model has ads, the global comics model has subscription. There are models out there for revenue, but the revenue is a lot less than the print revenue. So how can emerging and independent publishers, from your perspective, kind of leverage digital so they could actually be a viable revenue stream?
Well, I think the first big issue is, of course, when you have things like subscription and advertising, they favor the platform versus the creator. That is to say, but Global Comics will let you upload and sell your comic at a list price, I believe, on their website. So, what they do is they remove gatekeepers, which is one of the problems with the direct market. Is yes, you can probably find your local store. Problems is relative. Gatekeepers are important for curation too. I that was slip of the tongue. Sorry. But I mean, just the ability, anyone can upload a book, and they could do it and they can start selling it, which is the promise of digital. That creates whole other issues, of course, in terms of like, who is your audience? And direct to consumer marketing is very, very challenging because you're not just trying to get, not that this is easy anyway, but you can convince one shop owner, two shop owners, and you get distribution to a whole network. You have to convince like 1,000 people to buy your book through a digital store. And then there's a lot of incentivization towards sort of the revenue streams of the tech, like these tech hubs themselves versus the creators themselves. So it is unique to like the direct market in that you can actually anyone can become a comic creator instantly. But the problems that it creates actually, I think, make it more challenging in terms of, you can find comic store owners, you can seek out people, but you have to fight almost for every single fan in a very challenging social market. Like digital fans are online and social networks don't like links, and so it's just become very complicated in its own right, similar to how the direct market has its complications.
Well, I know that you're actually working on a system now to kind of address those concerns. So it is time for yet another shameless plug on the things that you're doing and how you're actually dealing with those issues.
Yeah, so I run a company called Sweet, and we are building a digital comic store that brings back the in-app purchasing of old. I'm the newest one here, so I'm mostly listening and learning from everyone. Um, but I've been in comics for about 3 years, and I'd already built and had a store not succeed. I'll put it that way. So I'm very focused on how we can support creators and not turn to a Spotify subscription model, or like Netflix, where it just becomes even more unsustainable for creators and publishers too. It's not just a creator problem. Like that revenue is really important to that they get the most bang per buck that they can out of selling. So, yep, that's what I'm doing.
Okay, fantastic. Again, if people have questions, um, please put them in the chat and we will start to go through the questions. But now we're going to talk to the editor-in-chief of Boom Studios and find out what his perspective is on all of these different distribution options. Because Andy, as the co-founder of Comics Experience, you also have experience with Marvel and Hasbro and IDW and your own publishing company, CEX. So before we even talk about Boom, so how do you actually see like the comic book distribution system as it is now compared to, what you saw in the past and what you think is going to happen in the future?
Sure. So it's a lot more complex than when I started. Like, I mean, I started as an editor at Marvel, and at Marvel, we were really just concerned about the direct market at the time, and people were saying, "Hey, did you know that we can sell graphic novels in bookstores?" Because that's how old I am. And that's just it's just gotten more and more complicated. Like everything that Kenny and Adam and Moni and Charlie have said is all rings true to me, except that, back then you could sort of concentrate on one or two things and maybe be okay if you chose the right ones for your project. But now it really is kind of doing all of it. And one of the things that I have learned, especially through CEX, the tiny publisher I ran for a bit, was that one of the most decisions you can make as a micro publisher or an independent creator is which ones you're actually going to put real effort in. And the best example I can give for that is one that Kenny brought up, which is that we opted not to go really with any of the digital comics providers that did that sort of like Netflix model sort of thing, where it's like you can read anything because there was no money that would come back to the publisher at all. Could that have been good publicity? Maybe, but I wasn't going to be able to track it. I didn't have the time to track it, even if I did have the tools. So um, I see a lot of publishers lean very heavily on being on social media, and I don't see any real sales effect from that. I'm not saying it can't be done, but if it just, we never saw any remarkable bump for the hours that it takes to pump into those places. And again, that has to do with kind of what Kenny was saying. They don't really like links anymore. So things that worked 15 years ago in social media don't really work as well anymore. If you're paying for ads, that's a different story, as long as you're doing it well and you're targeting them. So, yeah, I mean, it really is kind of a hit as many different distribution channels as you can. So the flip side of that, while there are certain things you may decide are not worth the amount of effort you'd have to put into it, you also have to be smart about what you do. So the other thing we did at CEX that in retrospect wound up being a much bigger deal than I thought of at the time, but I didn't want to be tied to one or two distributors. So we were the smallest publisher that was in both Diamond and Lunar. I think by a pretty wide margin, we were the smallest publisher that was in both. And we got a bookstore distributor, and we had one digital distributor that we worked with, where I got to know Kenny. Um, and it was great because I had those four places, and then when the inevitable happened and Diamond stopped distributing books or whatever, stopped paying bills, both maybe, um, we weren't in a position where it was like our business cannot continue without that one partner. I just, in general, I don't like putting my fate or my company's fate in the hands of, one other entity that I have no oversight over. Um, so diversifying in that way was really effective for us. But I wanted to make a good, honest effort to get into libraries, but I didn't have the bandwidth. So that was one we just didn't get to. And the same thing with Kickstarter. We ran 2 crowdfunding campaigns. They were moderately successful. They did fine. They did what they needed to do. They did not set the world on fire. And part of that was bandwidth. I didn't have the bandwidth to give that my all and to be hammering it for 30 days straight after 3 months of pre-planning. The next part we did pretty well because we had a really great we had great partners with printing and fulfillment. So that part actually went remarkably smoothly. But yeah, it's a lot of hard decisions, I think, for smaller independent creators and smaller publishers. And the one thing that I will mildly disagree with Adam about is that while these problems are being faced by small publishers and large ones, the current climate with tariffs and Diamond up and down, I think are actually very advantageous towards the larger conglomerates. Like they can weather those storms, and it's kind of forcing all of these creators who are like, wow, this just got 10 times harder and 10 times riskier all at the same time. They're now kind of looking at more traditional publishers again, in a way that I have not seen in the recent past.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually know one of the print managers. Well, Andy, you know one of the print managers over at Penguin Random House. And when the thing about tariffs, they just started talking about tariffs. I had lunch with him and I asked him what Penguin Random House was going to do for their whole like manga line. And he said, we have some warehouse in like, Minnesota that has millions and millions of tons of paper. And we have a printing press and whatever. They're going to do what they're going to do. And so you are correct. None of the people in Comics Experience, to the best of my knowledge, except maybe Charlie, has their own warehouse with millions and millions of tons of paper that they could just start printing stuff. But I think I want to ask the group now specifically about the diamond situation and what you guys think from your own specific perspectives emerging and independent creators should do or not do relative to Diamond. Let's say if they're not in Diamond yet and they're thinking, well, should I try? Should I not try? What do you think they should do? Adam, I'll start with you.
No, I don't. I would not. I don't think you would be allowed to. I can tell you that I just know from insider knowledge that they haven't really been bringing anybody in almost a year. So turning people away that they normally would have said yes to. So I don't know if they're even an option right this second. I would say your best bet if you are an emerging independent creator or independent publisher, your best bet is to work with someone who is already in place. Your best bet is to create some sort of deal with a Massive has a deal right now where they bring you in and they will list you inside of the Lunar catalog. There's a certain fee structure there. I would say anybody who's considering it should definitely look at that fee structure carefully before making that decision, because it's not. I don't believe that's for everybody. I would say that in that particular instance, I don't know that I would go to, if you are just starting out as a brand new creator, you have a product that is coming to market. Honestly, I think you need an audience first.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter if you're going to Kickstarter. It doesn't matter if you are going to direct market. It really doesn't matter if you're starting your own website. You need an audience before you need anything. And you're going to lose money. You're going to be spending money on your first few releases. That's just the nature of this beast. So spend the money getting the attention of an audience first. So to answer your question, I don't know that I would. If I were starting out from scratch right this second, I don't know that I would go to any of these options that we're talking about. I would probably spend that time and money and energy getting my product, my work, my creative work out and saying, here, I made this. What do you think? Subscribe to my Substack, subscribe to my, whatever. XYZ, create an audience first. When you have that audience, you can leverage that into a deal with Lunar. When you have that audience, you can leverage that into an actual successful Kickstarter campaign, as opposed to just jumping out into the Kickstarter campaign. It shouldn't be called Kickstarter. It should be called Kick Ender. You should do that after you've built the audience, right? Like begin with audience right now. And that's for everyone. If you look at on Apple TV right now, the series Silo, I can't remember the author's name. I wish I could, but he began this way of just giving away chapters of those books, just gave them away and built that audience up. And then when he went to go sell physical copies, the people who read it online for free went out and bought physical copies. Like, you're going to lose money. I'm sorry. That's just the way of the beast. The days of being able to go out and do a solicitation in Diamond, then take that money and get terms at a printer and just take the promise of that money and print, and then just take the money from the revenue of Diamond and then putting that at the printer, and you're actually making a profit. Those days are long gone, but they're long gone for everybody. They're long gone for novelists and movie directors and. If you are making creative work right now and you're building an audience from scratch, you need to begin with audience.
I think one of the other places where you can also do what Adam's talking about is the convention circuits. And that means even like smaller ones. If you have, and particularly right now, because with tariffs being this great unknown, you can do small print runs domestically, probably in a town right near you. You can pick them up. You can do really short print runs of like variant covers or special treatment covers that you can sell for 20 bucks a pop because they're limited to the show, or you're only selling them by hand or whatever. You can build an audience by interacting with other people who buy it. And there you may do some of that same thing where you've got giveaways and you're like we used to do a lot of this. And I'd have like a 4-issue miniseries, and it'd be $5 each or for each comic, but you could do the whole thing for 12 bucks or something like that, and people would just snatch it up. Or they'd be looking at the first issue and it'd be like, well, for 10 bucks more, you can get all 4, and they're like, ah, all right. And you could really build. And I had a lot of people that would come back at a show, like if they were there on a Friday and bought it, and they'd come back on Saturday and be like, hey, I read that. What else you got? Right. And if I had another miniseries, I'd introduce them to the other thing I had written, or people I was hanging out with, because we all banded together for these tables. I'd be like, well, you should really check out her work, or you should check out his art, or that sort of thing. And we would all sort of wind up cross-selling. But as we did this over a couple of years in a row, we started having people come back and they would bring their friends. And by the time we went full distribution, we had that audience in place. And even a lot of retailers knew who we are because a lot of them were at shows. So yeah, that worked out too.
And in the what am I no in the chat, the Comics Pals was a great channel. I recommend it. They had me on, and I think that shows how smart they are. They talk about how working to cultivate a following in spaces that facilitate comics and comics creations, like SPX or Discord or Patreon or Webtoon, right? We are in the day and age of Webtoon. There is no barrier for you to begin building the audience. but you really need to start with audience.
I would just say, you're completely right on the fact that you got to plan to lose money first. My business plan was I was going to lose money on the first 3 issues that I published to build a catalog to start making money. But I will say that you have to also look at Kickstarter as an audience builder. It's not just a place that you go to sell your books. If you're doing it right, every campaign you should bring in anywhere between 15 to 30% new backers. And so for me, I have built probably 90% of my audience from Kickstarter. And for me, it's grown from a backer pool of 300 in my first campaign to over 6,000 people in the ecosystem, primarily through doing more campaigns on Kickstarter. But that all takes time, and you need to have a business plan to sort of do that.
Two things about that before we jump into the questions, because we have about 15 minutes left and we have about 6 or 7 questions. In terms of the crowdfunding, there is a organization that you all should be aware of, if you're not aware of it already, called Comics Tribe, that focuses exclusively on crowdfunding and teaching people how to build campaigns. They just released a notify me at launch notification on Kickstarter for a crowdfunding planner. And I actually put that link in the chat. So if you want to check that out to get Tyler's book, because he exclusively focuses on crowdfunding. So if you want to actually learn a lot of the stuff that he's doing, that we also talk about in Comics Experience, check out that link. The other thing is, before we start going into questions, is that when we're talking about losing money, whether we're talking about marketing efforts or printing efforts or attending conventions, if you are an independent emerging creator, we talk about this in Comics Experience a lot, making sure you have a company in place that can actually use a lot of that spending as deductible expenses actually takes a lot of the bite out of spending that money, because it's going to be a business expense that you're going to be able to deduct from your taxes later. And that's going to actually help you get more momentum, because you're not just throwing money into a hole. That money, to a certain extent, is going to be helping to build your business and help your business be recognized by the IRS. And since nobody wants to talk about the IRS, I'm going to start talking about the questions that's in the chat. The first question is, and this question, Charlie, is going to be for you, but if other people want to chime in, that's cool too. What is a good cadence for crowdfunding? I.e., if you crowdfund issue 1 in, say, September, how soon should issue 2 be to keep that momentum?
Well, I think this totally depends on how soon you finish your issue. Because ideally what you'd want to do on a Kickstarter platform is you'd run your campaign, you distribute the issue. When you send out the physical copy of the issue, you have a little card in there that says, hey, I've got a new issue coming out. Here's the QR code to my pre-launch page. And you use the sending of the book to advertise the next issue. So you can just roll from one. If you're doing 3 issues a year, you think of it in a 4-month cycle. If you're doing 4 issues a year, think of it in a 3-month cycle, where 1 is the campaign, 2 is fulfillment, 2 is getting your funds, getting your pre-launch, and the 3rd is fulfillment. So just like a 3-month cycle. But basically, you always want to use those opportunities when you're reaching out to people, when you're actually sending them something to advertise the next book.
Very good. Anyone else have any additional things to add, or are we just going to let Charlie lay down the law there and move on? Yeah, everybody's nodding that you just gave the answer, Charlie. So we're not going to talk about it anymore. Next question. Is it possible that the tariffs may stir a stronger appetite for black and white comics, since so much color printing is international? Andy, do you want to take that one?
Sure.
Because you're old enough to remember black and white comics.
A, I am old enough to remember black and white comics. And B, I have also run a printing, graphic novel and comics printing business. So I think I'll take this one. Sure. But I'd say not likely. And the reason for that is that most printing presses are charging you for the amount of time, basically, that you're on press, not for the number of colors. So even when you see a black and white magazine or comic, it is usually printed on a 4 or 5 or even 6 color printing press. And you don't really get a discount for only using the one plate, because in the same time that it takes to to print 5,000 black and white comics, it's the same time it takes to print 5,000 full color comics. So there are still one color printing presses, but they're largely out of style. So maybe you could find a place where you could do it a little bit cheaper, but yeah, they're kind of hard to find, honestly.
Okay, there you go. Next question. At what stage in the creator-owned space should entertainment lawyers be hired for contracts, IP, royalties, management, etc.? You know what? I think I'll take this one because I know a lawyer. The answer is before the book, before the script of the book is written, you should have a contract with everyone who's involved with the book. Everyone who is going to own a piece of that book needs to be part of what's called a collaboration agreement. Everyone who's going to work on the book but not own a piece of the book should have a work for hire or a freelance contract. When that book is actually, you're ready to solicit that book and pitch it to publishers. Once the publishers actually start to get back to you with whatever creator-owned agreements they have, you should already have a lawyer in place so that they can look over the terms of that agreement, not just so they understand how it's going to affect you guys who are making the book, but all the other contracts that are involved, so they can actually look at it from a holistic standpoint. Shameless plug time. I offer free consultations for creator-owned books if you're in that space. But if you are actually working with a publisher that I actually already represent, and I can't represent the both of you, I know other comic book attorneys who are smarter than I am, probably more expensive, who will also help you out. So there you go. Next question. Being from Australia, do you have advice on how to build a US audience when it's harder to get to conventions over there? Anybody?
I can jump into this one. I'm actually going to skip ahead. Somebody asked a question or actually mentioned about building comics for the Black audiences for your work. And this did get me thinking about a particular channel that I've seen. And then I'm just going to say, like, they're mostly black creators using TikTok to create these businesses. They were doing what looked to me like, as Andy pointed out earlier, single print run, like print to order kind of books. They were selling them for $20 or $30, just as you would in a convention style. But they were using short form video in the way that like digital creators use it, where they were creating lots of different short form to push on their comic sales. And just based on the number of packing and shipping videos I saw, I was surprised to see how much money they were generating just doing short form video, selling these single issue comics. There's nothing stopping you from doing that from Australia, right? You could, because it is a print to order kind of product, you could work with someone on the States who is, printing and then shipping, handling fulfillment for you. All of those things are still available to you, not to mention selling digital and webtoons and on and on and on and on. There's still plenty of options for you.
So it sounds like what you're saying now is in addition to actually making a good comic and making sure the comic gets marketed correctly and making sure you have the right distribution channels and the right printer, that now they have to go into video production and distribution on multiple social media networks to actually sell the book. Is that what you're saying?
Or hire me to do it. No, what I'm saying is you gotta, yes, as Andy said, it's really smart to get good at something, right? Be the best at some part of this. There are still comics creators who are just selling directly in the same way they always have into the direct market, because they're just good at it, right? There are plenty of comics creators who only do conventions. But if you want to build a company that is going to be stable and diverse, you're gonna have to have a lot of different legs on that chair.
Yeah. Kenny, do you agree with this pontification?
I think, is my mic loud enough now, Andy?
Yes.
Just checking. Cool. You know, as the new fish here, the one thing I've noticed about the comics industry is you are at a disadvantage if you can't go to conventions and meet people. The nice part about it is, though, people in comics, because it's a smaller group generally than obviously other larger industries, but it is publishing broader, are very open to saying hello to you and talking about what you're doing. So while you got to match up time zones appropriately, reach out to people and say, "Hey, I'm building this comic. I really want it to be this. Can we have a Zoom or something? I'll schedule something like that." Beyond that, I know that there's a digital app comics comix.one who's actually run by an Australian creator. It's a digital platform he's building. I mean, there's the start of a community right there. You can start finding the Australian comics community, which, I mean, I think it's fair to say maybe we all here on this panel don't know as much about compared to the Western markets, but I'm happy to be wrong, of course. Um, and I think that reaching out is one of the positives I found about comics is how even though you are far away from like me as you can be, I'm in Seattle on the West Coast, you could still send me an email and we could talk about it. Like everyone's fairly accessible and meeting people. That's why conventions are so important. Even for digital people in the digital space, just putting your face in front of people is the beginning of your audience building, is actually the people who are invested in growing comics want you to succeed. Um, so I do think that you don't have to maybe go to the extent of even printing a book, obviously, because I'm digital. Like you could just put a sample online. It's not the same as a beautiful object. I totally agree, but you can put yourself out there and then use that as the starting point to build the network, which in comics is, for better or for worse, probably the best thing you can do for yourself of people you're connected to. And we're not limited because of these lovely tools to do it from Australia to America in milliseconds. So,
And can I add on there just one point about what Kenny was saying about building a network? Because I've been talking about networking for years, and networking sounds like such a business term that no one wants to do, and it's a total drag if you set out a task that for the next half hour I'm going to network. But all networking is finding ways to have conversations with people. That is it. Just find a way to connect, have a conversation, and that can be a total stranger at a show, it can be online, and it's one of the reasons why this industry still works so much off of video conferencing, in-person meetings at shows, and phone calls. Yes, there's a heck of a lot of emails and those sorts of things, but it is more of a social type of interaction that can lead to sort of business openings and opportunities. So if you think of it in terms of like I'm just having conversations with people, and the closer you can get to an in-person sort of experience, whether that is face-to-face in person or a video call or a phone call, the closer you get to tone of voice, seeing gestures, seeing facial expressions, the bigger that connection is going to be, and the longer lasting it will be. And that's one of the reasons why, we're all referencing, going to shows and all of that sort of thing. But think of it in terms of conversations, not in terms of like a business thing. I have to add, like, I mean, you're welcome to like send me your LinkedIn invite, and even if I accept you and you become my first, but if we've never had a conversation, what good does that do you other than, hey, I networked today? Check.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we try to do a lot in comics experience is we try to build opportunities for those conversations. So we have a Discord that is very active with comic book creators on all types of different levels, from like the, first time trying to get a book out all the way up to the editor-in-chief of Boom Studios is on our Discord, right? We have weekly Q&A sessions where people can come and ask whatever question they're struggling with in terms of any aspect of their comic book journey, and we will help them like work those things out. The last time we had a Q&A, people were just talking about different mailing strategies in case there were tariffs and how you actually work it in so that you don't actually lose all of your money, fulfilling a Kickstarter. So it gets that specific. And we also have happy hour where we just sit around drinking, which is probably the best part of the whole thing. Um, and all of that is geared towards having that kind of networking so you can create those kind of opportunities to make things easier. Like Adam was talking about, working with other creators to try to scale your opportunities, minimize your costs, minimize your exposure, maximize your reach. I think we're going to wrap it up there because I've asked all of these experts and professionals to take an hour out of their lives and I did not pay them. So I am not going to keep them any longer than I need to. But I think we'll wrap up with everybody. If everybody could just give the social media contact information that they are comfortable with giving. So if people want to reach out after this to get more information, whether it's about digital or crowdfunding or direct market or libraries, or you want to talk to Andy for some reason, I don't know, any of it. So let's see, Andy, you were last the first time. You can be first now.
Sure. I'm on Blue Sky only occasionally, but I'm at 39A Andy, so that's two A's next to each other in the middle there. Um, and really, that's about the only social media I'm ever on. But I am a part of Comics Experience, and I'm part of the Discord, so Comics Experience Community Pro. I'm on there a fair amount as well. Um, yeah, that's it. That's all
Very
I got.
good. Kenny.
Yeah, I'm typically on the screen way too much. I'm at Kenny M on Blue Sky. My company is at Sweet .dev, spelled out on everything, and I'm personally accepting submissions for Boom's editor-in-chief. If you have any proposals, I'll send them to him. I'm kidding, of course. I can't do that.
Very good. Very good. Moni.
Sure. Personally, Moni Bear across pretty much all social media. I do consult for anyone who's interested in just seeing what they would even need to start to do to get their books into libraries. So that's a conversation that we can have. I also represent a nonprofit, and we're speaking of networking right now, Creators Assemble across all social media platforms, creatorsassemble.org. And right now we are West Coast based in our networking, but we do host 2-hour networking events at WonderCon and at Comic-Con. Some of you here have participated in those several times, and that is a targeted opportunity to meet with folks across various aspects of the industry. So I hope you'll check us out.
Very good. Charlie.
So you can always find me on Kickstarter. In fact, I have a campaign live right now for the game. But I'm also on Blue Sky under Charlie Stickney. I'm on Instagram and Facebook under White Ash Comics. And I just like to take 1 second to say Moni is great, Adam is great, Kenny is great. They're all fantastic at what they do. So if you're a creator looking for some additional support, they are wonderful people to work with. Andy's great, but he's not going to take your calls. He's too important now. So, but yeah, but really, like as a creator, I would work with any of these people. So, full endorsement there.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. Adam, you can take us home.
My name is Adam Freeman. You can find me at Adam Bang Freeman on the various socials or pranadm.com. Or I do have a regular podcast called Comic Industry Insiders that is on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. We're also doing a Comic Industry Insiders live tomorrow at 2 p.m. So if you make sure you like and subscribe and get the alert button, because we'll be talking a lot more about this. It'll be fun. We'll retread everything we just talked about.
Fantastic. All right. Everyone, thank you everybody for actually joining us for this discussion. I hope you got something out of it. If you came into the call late and you did not hear the amazing knowledge that was dropped at the beginning of the call, this video will be did I remember to record it? Yes, I remembered to record it. So this video will actually be available on YouTube probably by the end of the week, and we will send out a link to the YouTube video to everybody who is actually on the call, just so you have it. So with that, thank you everybody very much, and enjoy the rest of your night and have fun with your comments.
Very well, Lori. Thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Have a good night.
Good night.